So real estate requires very special, much higher levels of financial education, sophistication, and experience. And what really happened, as you know, is that the Federal Reserve Bank and the Treasury, they just started printing more money than ever before in the history. So this is called the everything bubble. And from some of the more people I respect, they say this is the biggest bubble in world history. And it is in dollar amounts. And if history repeats itself, this is going to be the biggest crash in history. Now, for many people, it's going to be the worst thing ever happens to them. But for Kenny and me, it's the best time to buy more real estate after the crash. Savers are losers. Man, I got attacked by every loser out there. New York Times came after me. How can you say savers are losers? Then I said, your house is not an asset. Oh, how can you say that? You know, I was living at the Point on 16th Street in Phoenix, and I was on this TV show, a local TV show in Phoenix, and I said, your house is not an asset. And I walked in for breakfast after the TV show, and I got mobbed by these two women came after me. You don't know what you're talking about. My house is an asset. It's the biggest asset I have. I'm going, okay. No, they were screaming at me. I'm going, okay. I won't say it anymore. And the third thing is the rich don't work for money. So those are the three things. Savers are losers. Your house is not an asset, and the rich don't work for money. Those are three very important points that came out in Rich Dad, Poor Dad 25 years ago. And today, Rich Dad, Poor Dad remains the #1 personal finance book in history. But I had to go through hell listening to everybody else. It has been the best. We've made so much money. So there's always good things and bad things, but just realize that it's not, you don't just buy it and flip it, or you buy it and hold, because it's a very sophisticated product. But we've seen guys do that. They go and buy a $20 million property. It crashes, or they can't manage it, and people vacate it. Prior to 2020, 40% of all Americans had less than $1,000 in savings. And the moment the price of oil went up, food goes up. And today what's happening, so the retail market is collapsing because the American consumer doesn't have any money because they're paying more for gasoline and they're paying more for food. So how is that a good deal? Well, they have to rent. Well, the millennial generation and their kids, it doesn't look like they'll be able to buy. And the problem is BlackRock and those guys, those big private equity guys, hedge funds came in, they bought all the single families up because they realized what Kenny and I realized, that it's really renting property is better than owning property. You know? So remember what I said, savers are losers. The reason savers are losers, this is back 25 years ago in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, is what caused the bubble is because, especially after the 2020 election and COVID, they printed $10 trillion.
I know.
But then again, they can't afford their houses. They can only afford to rent. So that's why I said savers are losers. Your house is not an asset, because I think they're going to push the interest rates up. And a lot of people who just bought property recently, hoping the price will go up, because they're losers, because they listen to stupid people like my poor dad. You know what I mean? People who have no idea on money. When I said savers are losers 25 years ago, I got attacked. I said, your house is not an asset. I got attacked. And I said, the rich don't work for money. Then every communist said, oh, all you guys don't think about is money. Well, Kenny and I don't use money. We use debt, right? You know, the reason savers are losers is because debt is a better way of buying, right? And the problem with that was interest rates go up, the stock market is going to come down. When the stock market comes down, gold, silver comes with it, and everything comes with it. But those with hard assets like cash flowing real estate and oil and stuff like that, money just keeps coming in. To me, that made sense. So that was my rich dad side. And my poor dad side was you should get a job, buy a house because it's an asset, get your PhD and put your money in the stock market. I just don't do that because my rich dad taught me differently. My rich dad was on the other side of the three-sided coin, heads, tails, and the edge. Remember, in 2020, 40% of the U.S. population didn't have $1,000. But also it forced more people to become renters. And that's driving up the price of rent because the cost of building new apartment houses through the roof, right? So the point here is the reason Kenny and I got together, I asked him to write 3 books for us.
Yep.
And what were the 3 basic, because there's 3 basic books. If you're going to go into real estate, it's not like having a 401k. And speaking of 401ks, when the stock market crashes, my generation, the boomer generation, we're toast because the boomer generation was the first generation with a 401k. It happened in 1974 when the Fed and the Treasury and the government passed the thing called the ERISA Act, Employee Retirement Income Security Act. Anytime the government says income security, you know you're screwed. But that was a 401k. So when the stock market crashes, just as my generation starts to retire, they're toast. And they're going to start selling their houses because that's all they got, right? So back in 1973, when I came back from Vietnam, my poor dad, the poor guy, you know, Robert, I want you to go back to school, get your master's degree. I said, I hated school. Why would I go back and get my master's degree? And he says, and then you get your PhD. I said to my poor dad, who was the head of education for the state of Hawaii, head of the teachers unions, you know, it's one of the reasons I started investing with Kenny is I make so much money. I've got to call Kenny. I said, Kenny, I need about $4 million in debt. Why do I want debt for taxes? Another thing too is my first real estate class was 1973. And because my rich dad said, if you're going to be rich, you have to understand real estate. The purpose of being an entrepreneur is to buy real estate, not to buy a house, but to buy real estate. So it was long before I met Ken. So I'm still in the Marine Corps. I just came back from Vietnam. I took my first real estate course, and the instructor gave me the best advice of all. He's a real estate investor. He says, I want you to look at 100 properties and write 100 reports on why the things are bad. I was saying, why did I do that? But that's the discipline. You have to look at least 100 properties, write a report, what's good, what's bad about it. And that's how I learned. And then all of a sudden I started to see things the average guy could not see because they're trying to buy a house. It's got a nice bedroom. It's got a kitchen. I'm not looking at the kitchen or the bedroom. I'm looking at the value of the property. So after 100 properties, I went, oh my God. So there was this one property on the island of Maui, and most people say, well, Maui's expensive, and it is. But the property on the island of Maui was a bad investor, dropped the whole property, and I bought my first rental unit. I already had a house, an apartment, a condo in Waikiki. But so I buy this condo in Maui. It was $18,000, nothing down. So I had $18,000 in debt, and I made $25 from debt. It changed my life.
Small ebook, big impact, The Wealth Tree. The only 4 ways that will make you financially free forever. Download it here for free. Small ebook, big impact, The Wealth Tree. The only 4 ways that will make you financially free forever. Download it here for free.